Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Planning Board meeting of June 7th, 2022. First, the order of business is to introduce the Planning Board members. So we'll start down at my left, Vaughn Dugan. Next to Vaughn is Mike Hodder, who is the Vice Chairman. To my right is John Thurston. Then Brad Harriman, who is the representative from the Board of Selectmen, and Julie Jacobs, who is an alternate. And Julie, would you be willing to sit in for Peter Goodwin?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first item is the public hearing. And the way the public hearing goes is that the applicant will make a presentation. The planning board members can ask questions during that presentation if they want to. Then we'll ask Tavis if he has any comments. And then if those things happen and there are no other issues, then the planning board will grant some waivers or decide to grant waivers for items that have been requested, and then accept the application as complete. At that time, then any member of the public that wants to address the issue will be, that will be your time to speak. Okay, so the first item, the Carlton Family Trust and Timothy and Cheryl Long at 246 Haynes Hill Road, tax map and lot 33 to 35 and 57 to -10. This is case 2022-05. It's a boundary line adjustment for 2 lots. Okay, if the applicant, come on up and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Ted Wright. I'm a licensed land surveyor with White Mountain Survey and Engineering, which is now a part of Horizons Engineering. I'm here to represent the boundary line adjustment. It's a small piece, about 5,600 square feet. They want to take off the road from the Carlton Family Trust property and put it on the property next door that belongs to the Longs. And the only real condition after that would be that any rights that the Carlton Family Trust has to this road are extinguished as a part of this boundary line adjustment. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Tavis, did you have any issues that you thought we should address?
I don't have any issues to address. If we get to that point, I do have some recommended conditions of approval, but the board does need to consider a waiver of section.
Waivers, right, yeah. Yeah, you need to speak to the waivers that you have requested.
Well, the big one is
That's a big one.
Yeah, did you hear that? We'd rather not have to survey both pieces. It's a little tiny 5,600 square piece of land that we're talking about. And to redo the boundary on the 2 properties would be a bit exorbitant. It would be very costly. And
So for the board, that's section 174-7, number 4, G and H. And
Okay, and was that the only one? I thought there were 2.
that I'm aware of, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the only one. Okay. All right, board members, do you have any questions?
The meets and bounds of the area that you're looking to extinguish on Morgan Lane are reliable, are they? The dimensions of the portion of Morgan Lane that you're looking to extinguish are reliable as shown on this plan?
What do you mean by reliable?
I mean,
We surveyed it and
that is an actual
monuments.
survey. Okay,
That's
very good.
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I'd entertain a motion to grant the waiver.
Be happy to move to grant waiver from 174-7 4G and H.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to grant the waivers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that means that the application is now considered complete. And entertain a motion to accept the application so that we can open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, the public hearing is now open on this item. If anybody wants to speak to it, now is the opportunity for you to do that. Okay, all right. Okay, guess there's no public that wants to speak, so we can go ahead and you've gone through the items that we should be considered for approval.
Recommended conditions of approval, with one, applicant responsible for all recording fees for the notice of decision. And the second is that applicant shall submit copies of the revised deeds for the resulting lots prior to their being recorded at the applicant's expense.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question.
Yeah.
The revised deeds will be sufficient to extinguish the rights to passage across Morgan Lane?
Functionally, all the board is doing is the boundary line adjustment. If they want to include extinguishing the rights, that would be in the deeds, yes.
So we do not need a separate instrument for that? This decision tonight will do that?
I don't believe so.
It'll be in the deed? Okay, thank you.
Okay, any
So
other questions?
Are there deeded rights to the other properties that are extinguished or proposed?
There's only the one property, the Carlton Family Trust property that we're concerned with. So from that point out to the road, the Carlton Family Trust won't be able to use the road. It does not address other properties. So this is just about the Carlton Family Trust.
And what about the long properties?
Right.
They're the ones getting they have the rights to the road now, and they're getting the rights to this piece. So we don't want to extinguish that right.
Okay, so this will take in the whole road, our action tonight.
Only for the Carlton Family Trust, the usage by the Carlton Family Trust.
Oh, okay,
And-
all right. Well, then be combined with the other.
I must say that we're treading on an area that probably should talk to an attorney about, rather than me. I'm not an attorney.
For the board's purposes, I don't believe it affects the boundary line adjustment. That is a civil issue between the two.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. And I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Be happy to move to approve the boundary line adjustment for tax map lot numbers 033-035 and 057-010 with the two conditions of approval as presented by the planner.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to second that? I'll second the motion. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Okay, all right, thank you very much
Thank you
for
very much.
coming.
Just one comment for Tavis. I notice on our ArcGIS, Morgan Lane is located to the north of the Carlton property, and the little hatched area in the color photo is not identified as Morgan Lane on our GIS map,
It depends to what scale you zoom in.
as close as I can get, at which point everything pixelates, but nonetheless, Morgan Lane is identified as that little sliver at the very top.
Correct.
Not the sliver at the bottom, so there's a problem with the ArcGIS labeling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, then that takes care of the public hearings, and we'll now go on to the discussion items. The first item on the list is the short-term rental committee report. Actually, the short-term rental committee did meet, and I think I passed on all the minutes to the planning board members. Basically, they have decided to come up with a definition for short-term rentals, and they have taken no further action. The committee then is sort of on hiatus, but may be discontinued at a future date, it seems. Mike, you want to go through what the committee decided?
Yeah, the short-term rental subcommittee discussed the current court cases out of Portsmouth and Conway, and the commentary from the Superior Court Justice regarding the town's ordinances as offering protection against abuses in short-term rental should such exist. They also discussed and were aware of the status of the Senate Bill 249, which has been put out for further study, essentially, and its failure. They were also aware of the fact that absent any action or any recommendations from their subcommittee to this board, to the public in the form of protective ordinances, this town is unprotected in any fashion from any abuses in short-term rental usage that might occur in the future. I'm not suggesting that there are any. I'm not suggesting that there are any likely to become. I'm simply referring to the opinion from the Superior Court Justice who said that she would, and the courts would uphold any regulation and ordinance that the town had in place. Absent any, there would be nothing to uphold. Consequently, the town is currently unprotected against proliferation, any further proliferation of short-term rentals. The subcommittee was uninterested in making any recommendations for protection to the planning board. The only recommendation they made was to define a short-term rental as 30 days and/or equivalent, so that we can put that into 175, but no further than that.
Or
So
less.
it's
Or
up-
less.
Or less,
Yeah,
yep.
right.
So it's up to this board whether or not this board wants to accept their recommendation, whether it wants to go further, whether it wants to reconvene with a differently constituted short-term rental subcommittee, or whether it wants to continue doing nothing on the issue. I'm not recommending anything in any direction, but it's something that the board should be aware of, be thinking about, and maybe revisit before too long, because as the Justice stated, we are currently unprotected.
Okay, John and Brad, you were also at the meeting. Did either of you have any comments?
No, I think Mike explained it pretty well there of how it was, conversations went there that day, that morning. I do think we probably should at least start out with a definition to get into the books there. I think we should definitely, keep it on our radar and have discussions board level about this anyway, because we're going to have to address it at some point.
Yeah.
Of how we want to approach it as these state laws and rules, develop here and stuff, and how we can not just abide by them, but work with them and protect the, get something in place for the town to that works for Wolfeboro. So.
Right. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, John.
So, to Mike's point, I think the committee met with vigor and solid discussion. I don't really think that the committee was disinterested in making any moves to craft anything. I think, again, what we all came down to was the legal aspect. And my last meeting, I said, I think it's the planner's position and his legal support to create the legal framework that the town can adopt, rather than a subcommittee of volunteers who are there to serve the purpose of serving the community and to get fine-tuned, the planner has to be able to implement it. And if the committee comes up with some suggestions, I don't know what the planner would do if he would implement those suggestions. And that's why I say it's better off coming from him, because he'll support the recommendations. So to me, I think we've chased our tail to the point where I'm going to leave it in the planner's lap at this point, and I'd be glad to reconvene this subcommittee to discuss anything he would bring forward.
Yeah, the reason that they settled on the 30 days was due to the fact that the committee had heard quite a bit of testimony from residents who do rent out their homes for a couple of weeks or maybe a month as a way of paying taxes. So I think that also entered into the part of their decision. But I mean, I think we really need to talk about this a little further, and with the thought of getting it on the town ballot to see how people react to it. Because as Mike said, the judges said, you know, we need something to go on if these issues are going to keep being brought to the that level. So anyway.
So I wonder, it sounds like there was consensus that a short-term rental is 30 days or less.
Yes.
So that's a definition, that's helpful. But what are we going to do with it? You know, are we going to have the police department, you know, check on the fire? You know, what is it that 30 days or less triggers?
Well, that could go into the zoning ordinance as a definition.
Right, it'll go into 175, 175. It'll also go, it'll trigger an understanding in the ADU, detached section thereof, regarding short-term rentals just being disallowed. And that's basically it. But like with every one of our ordinances that require a member of the public to do something or not to do something, we rely on the member of the public's willingness to abide by the law and do what he or she is supposed to do, rather than having a whole bunch of policemen out there with books of zoning ordinances making sure that we all do what we're supposed to.
Right. Yeah, and the police really don't have anything to do with zoning, so.
No.
But police don't have anything directly to do with zoning, but if there are complaints, police can be used to
Yeah, I'm sorry.
put eyes on an area at different times of the day beyond when the code officer is
I'm
in the
sorry I
office.
raised that analogy. Strike the word police from my comments earlier.
Yeah.
No, I'm simply saying that the definition of 30 days or less will go into 175, 175. It will then trigger an understanding in the accessory dwelling unit detached section thereof, should that pass the voters next March. And that's basically it. As far as short-term rentals are concerned, the town has no other ordinances in place that in any way affect the behavior of people who want to use short-term
So
rentals.
effectively, the definition would read something akin to the use of a residential unit for residential occupancy of 31 days or 1 month or 31 days, whichever is less. So by defining it as a use and then no zone allows short-term rental, it's effectively disallowing short-term rentals. The enforcement becomes just as tricky with or without the definition.
So it could be thought of as a useful method. Let's say we have affordable housing or elderly housing, that we limit it to no short-term rental, that we continuously make sure that these things are not quickly turned over. Whenever we approve something, we make sure that it's not like the ADU, it's not a short-term rental.
Yes,
So that's a tool.
right.
Yeah, and that would be the current maximum level of protection that we have.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to add that Susan Replier and I met with the police back quite a few months ago, and they have reassured us that they do follow up on all the complaints that come in about noise and things, and do the best that they can with those issues, so.
I would be concerned that this short-term rental definition is the layup to the ADU discussion, because as you just heard from Mike, you know, he's thinking that there's going to be an ADU ordinance coming from this board in March that we're going to vote on, and really, all I've seen is for discussion only on any of the papers that I've seen. Again, we don't have any tools in order to oversee the short-term rental policing or anything thereof. And then if we say in another ordinance that the short-term rentals aren't allowed, they're prohibited, then we're just adding insult to injury. It's not, we're basically, we don't have a tool to enforce another ordinance if we can't enforce the original ordinance.
Well, we are going to get on to the discussion of the ADU in just a moment, but I mean, I think if it's in the zoning ordinance, then it can be enforced if people bring it to our attention. You know, we would enforce it in the way that we do any other zoning violations.
If the board wants to make the recommendation that the term short-term rental be added to definitions, it would be done in such a way as establishing a use, whether ADU happens or not, whether inclusionary happens or not. It's not dependent on ADU. Getting the definition in of short-term rental as a use that is then not listed in any of the zoning categories makes it an enforceable entity. Not any more enforceable than any other zoning, but equally enforceable.
So I would move that as a planning board, we project it and put it in the definitions so that it can be made a tool for any future projects or, you know, whatever housing opportunities we're creating in this town. It seems to be very fluid right now. It would be a
Right.
good tool.
Okay, is that a motion?
So I move that we add the definition of ADU to our definitions in the zoning.
Short-term rental.
Short-term, sorry.
Oh, okay, and then we would go through preparing an ordinance and having the public hearing
Yes,
and then placing it on the
to
town.
make this agreement from that board of any use at all, I think we should at least have that definition.
So was that a motion to direct staff to come back to this board with a definition for consideration in order to add the definition to?
Yes, please.
Seconded.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded to add this to our list of items that we'll bring forward to a public hearing when we work on ordinances. And all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, all right, Tavis, so we'll see that again later in the fall, right?
2 weeks.
It's okay, all right. Okay, okay, the next discussion is on the accessory dwelling unit. Tavis, you've made some changes to this, which we can go over in a minute, but I was also concerned because when looking through the existing ordinance, we had a set of criteria for granting the permit for an accessory dwelling, and, you know, we probably should think of something like that in this particular, for, you know, when we're redoing this accessory dwelling, we should probably include that. It's already in there.
Is that a checklist?
Yeah, no, it's in the ordinance.
I don't know what section you think is missing.
It was, I thought it was in 175, whatever that number is, 17557, I thought that it was in there.
What you have in front of you quite literally is the existing ordinance with the changes this board recommended. The criteria for approval, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I was
I
just
re- I
just
returned
thinking
it.
that if we're going to be talking about conditional zoning permits, we should have some guidance in there when the planning board is looking at these applications. That's all,
Okay,
okay?
I don't understand.
I think that's a checklist.
Yeah, well, it was a checklist, but it could be in the ordinance also.
It's not,
Okay,
it's
what I-
not in the current ordinance that
Right,
I'm looking
no,
at right
yeah, it
now.
isn't in the current one, but we had talked about it.
So on the first page, 175-57.1E, last sentence, it is that checklist. I can revise, I don't know if it's worth revising the checklist, but I'm not going to revise the checklist until the planning board comes up with a conclusion on what the language is going to be. But I'm happy to do that.
Okay, well, there was, we could have conditional use permit criteria, and that's the type of thing that I was looking for.
Different from
Well, we
what's,
say site suitability, neighborhood impact, does it create a nuisance or not?
Those aren't special exception criteria, are they?
Well, they could be called a conditional permit criteria.
So you would take the ones from
Yeah.
special exception
Yeah,
and move them
right,
into criteria?
yeah, similar to that.
Why would we do that, though? Just
So
asking.
that we've got the board focusing on what they probably should be focusing on, which would be the impact in the neighborhood.
Do you want to turn, right now, we have in paragraph E of the discussion document,
Right, yeah.
conditional
right.
use permit criteria. Do you want to change that to special exception use
No.
criteria?
No, conditional use criteria.
Then you want to include special
Yeah,
exception
yeah,
criteria into
Just as
this?
guidance for the planning board to look at when they're reviewing these.
Then are you looking for planning board guidance for review, or are you looking for
When
an
they're-
ordinance that an
when they're-
applicant has to abide by?
The applicant would, yes, have to abide by it, will have to speak to it at a public hearing. And then,
You basically, in other words, you'd be holding him to special exception criteria.
no, we're not talking about special, we're talking about a conditional use
Well,
that the planning board would be using. That was,
I guess I don't follow, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay,
The conditional use criteria that we have in the existing ordinance is in 175-57-1E, and they have been largely carried over to discussion document in paragraph F.
okay,
So you're asking, you're suggesting that we should have, in addition to these, more?
yeah, yes, just the impact on the neighborhood. That's basically what I'm thinking about.
And this is for both, this is only for detached ADUs.
Yes, right. Because those are the ones that are getting the conditional use. The others will be permitted by right.
And this is new to the discussion. Do you have a
Yeah.
list of those that you'd like to see included?
No, but I can get one. I mean, I can put one together. It was just isn't that up to the planner to come up with that?
Well, this is
but-
the document he came up with.
Yeah, no, I know.
I don't mean to be
and-
argumentative,
and
but I'm
this-
just a little bit confused.
This is something that I'm suggesting we think about.
Okay, then.
The other item is that we don't have the amendment for the accessory dwelling unit. We should have that in the ordinance. And it also, accessory buildings say you can't use it for habitable area. So that needs to be changed. And I know that one I brought up before. So that also needs to be included here.
I can look, I mean, if, for those reading along at home, section 175-215 already says review of conditions for grant of permit. The planning board may, subject to the following criteria, grant permits for accessory dwelling units before reaching a decision, et cetera, et cetera. And
Right.
it has A, site suitability,
adequate usable space, adequate access, absence of environmental constraints. B, immediate neighborhood impact, that the proposal maintains the aesthetic continuity for the primary dwelling unit as a single-family dwelling. The ADU entry door is not visible to the public way. C, that
Right.
there will be no undue nuisance. So it's already,
Okay, and I just wanted, people also need to address the issue that it's going to have in the neighborhood that they're putting it in. That's all I'm talking about. We can add it as a sentence or however we want to add it. I mean, I don't think that's out of line in any way.
do you want 175-215 moved into 57.1, or do you want a sentence added in 175-215B?
In D, did you say D?
B as in boy.
Yeah, E. Yes, we can add it there at the end. And then the two definitions that I've mentioned, they really do need to be changed.
Which definition? I didn't hear
Accessory
that.
building, that's for one, and also we probably should have a definition for accessory dwelling unit.
I think
In the definition section.
we do.
What?
We do.
So those are two separate things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in the definition section, yes.
Okay.
We have a definition of accessory building or structure. We do not
Yeah.
have a definition of accessory dwelling unit.
Right, and the
So we will need,
Well,
sorry,
we talked about doing that. It used to be written in 57.1, and 2 meetings ago, I recommended moving that into 175, 175, so all the definitions
so
are
we will
together.
Yeah.
eventually have one. All right, so that's covered.
Okay.
Can I point out that
what about the accessory building?
You already have one.
that one's in there?
Without the, it's already in the,
Yep.
oh, okay, well, it needs to be in the definition section.
Accessory
And
building-
that one in the definition section needs to be changed. Otherwise, we're going to be working against ourselves.
Well, an accessory building or structure is a structure containing no habitable space,
Right.
which is categorically different from an accessory dwelling unit.
I know it is, and that's why I say we just need to add that, either add it in that one or come up with a new definition.
It's already in our current definition of accessory building or structure.
Well, the only complication that I can think of is that if you can only have two, and now you have an additional
Right.
thing,
Yes.
is the third thing a potential accessory dwelling unit, or is the accessory dwelling unit one of the two that you can have by right on your lot? Accessory structures, I mean.
Right.
That's
yeah.
where I was going at the last meeting, and the board didn't want to go down that path. I'm happy to go back down that path.
Okay, all I'm saying is that we really need to have it defined so that it's specific. That's all I'm saying.
Well, at the end of the definition of accessory building or structure, it says swimming pools, tennis courts, and like outdoor residential sports facilities, well houses, dog houses, septic systems, and parking areas shall be exempt from the number limitation. We can simply add ADU or detached ADU into that list.
Yep, right, we could do that.
Okay,
That would work.
that I can do.
So we'll just redefine accessory building or structure in 175, 175 to include ADUs.
Under the
list.
exemptions.
And Tavis is working on a definition we already have for an ADU, which will be added into 175,
And
175.
175.
So those are
Okay.
two of your objections.
Yep,
then
those weren't objections, they were simply
Observations.
suggestions.
Observations. Don't hold me to the literal meaning of the word. And then as far as the conditional use permit criteria are concerned,
Oh, remember, 175-215
used to apply to all ADUs because the only ADU was by conditional use permit. So I think all you need to add, if you'd like, as a reference, it would be E4, applicant shall comply with 175-215.
Okay.
I was just going to suggest that that's kind of superfluous, since he has to anyway.
I'm just trying to follow the flow.
I understand.
Okay, when I was looking at the definition section, there is a definition for special exceptions. So it seems if we've got that in there, we should also put what a conditional use permit
Okay, I can
in
do
the definition section. I thought it was pretty straightforward. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Do you want to go through the changes that you made, Tavis?
No, the only thing I would recommend doing is on F7, is following the guidance from, or recommendation from the short-term rental committee. I would rephrase that to be, shall be used as a short-term rental. Now that the board is looking at having a definition of short-term rental, we don't need to explain what it is. That way, if the board ever changes what a short-term rental is, this ordinance would also have to be amended.
Yep, good idea.
Either way is fine with me.
That's fine.
Okay, and so on number 8, for municipal sewer service and septic service, will they come with an application that says that this requirement is met? That would be one of the things that would be
Number 8 is more information for the applicant. That is just simply the reality of installing an ADU
Or any addition.
or any addition.
Okay, all right.
You really don't need 8 to be in here. I just left it in because it was
Well,
in the
no, I
original.
think it needs to be in there. I'm
Well,
not talking
It's
about
an obvious,
taking.
but
That's
yeah.
arguable whether it needs to be in there. You physically have to have septic if you're going to have someone living in something. So whether it says it in here or not, it has to be done.
Okay, well, I think it's helpful to have it in there so that people realize that they've got to address that issue.
Can we jump back up to number 4?
Yep,
Is there one too many words? No ADU shall not exceed?
Correct?
Thank you. Good catch. Go back up to the first line of F, and after the word shall, insert also.
Also comply?
Shall also
shall
comply.
also comply in F. Also comply, okay. Anything else? Okay, so we need to decide when we're going to have the public meeting.
So I have one more thing.
Oh, okay, sorry, John.
To that public meeting comment, is what data we have that's been given to us by the planner that would suggest the amount of houses that are out there that would be turned into ADUs, how many are on private sewer, how many are on town sewer, and what other accessory apartments are out there. So we can get a full range of what's out there and what's going to happen to them. So right now, no data has been given to me to push this topic. This has just been a discussion. We think it's coming by the state. We should do something now. And I'll be honest with you, I've talked to a lot of people out there, and I've described this concept to them, and not one person has thought it's a good idea. They all roll their eyes and say, it's a terrible idea. Why are you wasting your time? I said, well, we're going through the process, and I'm hopeful that you'll turn up at the forum and voice your concerns and say, we like the character of our town. We like the nice spacing of our homes. We don't like to see a bunch of 2 or 3 other cottages built on a property that you're going to have to contend with all these other neighbor problems. And that's what they're saying to me. So I think, you know, I don't know where the momentum is coming from. I'm just not seeing it. Maybe somebody else should come to us and tell us about the positive input that they're hearing.
Okay, well, that is why we want to have the public meeting, so that we can get that feedback. So Tavis, can you get the kind of data that John is talking about?
I think I need to speak with John outside the meeting to determine what he's looking for.
Yeah.
Well,
Functionally speaking, no houses can be turned into a detached ADU. Any house can be approached with an ADU. So any house that doesn't already have an ADU could have an ADU. Any vacant lot could be built with a house, including an ADU.
So that's kind of where I'm going. We have lots out there that are vacant. We don't know what that number is. So organically, if we knew the vacant lots that were out there in our town, we could know what the growth pattern of those vacant lots are to say, do we need to add ADUs detached to all these other houses if there's already buildable lots out there? And that's kind of what I'm getting at here.
So you're looking for the number of vacant lots existing or potential vacant lots?
Existing, and then you have the existing single-family homes out there that would be turned into an ADU situation.
but they already can be.
I know, we just don't know the number. We don't have that number. I know they can be, but I'm not looking at a number in front of me saying
Yeah.
that there's 7,000.
Yeah. Okay, all I'm saying is that there is a state statute that has required us to adopt this. And when we adopted it as the planning board, we said, okay, we will adopt it, but it needs to be attached. So that's how we dealt with
Yeah.
it. And now we're taking it another step.
I understand the
Okay.
attached part, and I asked the question last time, are detached ADUs permitted? And Tavis said, no, they're not permitted in the town of Wolfeboro currently. And I think I'm okay with staying in that concept and not allowing them. That's just,
Yeah.
that's the input that I'm getting from my community.
Okay, all right.
But I would like to know what houses are out there, what vacant lots are out there, and what numbers these people are going to have in front of them to say, these are the numbers. Because just discussing it doesn't really give you a substantive picture of the effect of your local community and your small neighborhoods. It just doesn't.
If I can determine the number of vacant lots and try and do some vetting of that data as to which ones are actually buildable, and then if I can determine the number of single-family homes based on the data that's available, that would equal the number of ADUs,
Right.
regardless of detached or attached.
Well, I think we got here because we found that we have no applications or almost none for ADUs. You know, we were concerned about it, and it doesn't seem to be happening. So we're trying to figure out a way to provide more housing in a way that's controlled by the property owner, not loose, you know.
So that was part of my understanding. Also part of my understanding is the board was looking at creating housing opportunities in town. The board started with the density discussion and didn't gain much traction because of water and sewer limitations and general feedback that the density of Wolfeboro doesn't need to increase. So the board then said, well, another avenue to consider would be, given the limited number of ADU applications, consider detached.
Right,
Another smaller step would be to simply do the first part of this for discussion only and make ADUs permitted by right and not moving forward with the detached at all. You're not losing any protections, you're not losing any coverage, you're not losing any guarantees under the regulations. That would be another way to half-step forward to see if that increased the interest for the public in having accessory dwelling units.
And another interim step could be detached if it's an existing secondary building on a lot and not a new one. That's another level. But
Frankly, with that, my experience has shown that what people do is go out and they build a structure and then apply to convert it to an ADU. But it is a step.
yeah. But there are structures out there that are former structures that had a use, that have no use, that would be nice to keep those structures.
Correct.
Thinking of things like barns and farm buildings and
But this
whatever
is,
there.
this is a way to regulate them, though,
Yeah.
rather than just having it done kind of willy-nilly on the slide.
Well, the bigger picture from my perspective is, as this board has often alleged, people are just going to do it anyway. If you make it legal to do it, then you know that it is at least being done safely, as opposed to just being done and people trying to operate under the radar.
So, Tavis, it sounds like if you can figure out the number of residential homes that we have, we know that they could all have them already. And then John has said also the vacant lots in the residential zone. That is it.
To a degree, that's very easy to say and much harder to do with the data that's available, but conceivably it could be done. I don't want to make the board think that that's going to be a 100% number.
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
also the way things work is everything progresses very slowly. It's not as if suddenly we're going to have every available lot developed into a house and an ADU. I mean, that's just not likely in any case.
Well, especially given the past 4 years of experience.
Right.
So can I just step back a second? Tavis made that comment, and I think it's a fundamental difference that I have with his concept of his theory of if we allow people to do something illegally, then we should make a rule to allow them to do it, rather than, I think the rule was made because people didn't want them to do it in the first place. So you're really discounting the large numbers of people that want to make the rule to not allow them to break the rule. And I think your job is to stand behind the rule that's already there, rather than to see people that are going to break the rule anyway and say, well, let's just allow everybody else to just have their way, when that wasn't really the premise that got us here.
No, I am on a regular, almost daily basis confronted with people asking me what a half bath on the ground floor is. That is the effect of me saying.
Okay, well, we're not talking about that one right now.
We are.
Okay.
And we need to talk about it for a second, because a lot of people don't understand what that is. When people get aggravated with the explanation of that, it leads me to believe and points the code officer to pay particular attention when that structure is built, because that's what we have to enforce, because that is the rule. That became a rule, as I understand, because people were concerned about people putting accessory dwelling units, if you will, or rental space in an accessory building. So the presumption was, if we put that in the rule, that can be enforced, and that is being enforced. You kind of twisted what I said. The assumption the board is making is that people are going to do it anyway unless there's a rule. My position is, if we're going to accept that people are going to do it anyway, perhaps the board should take a different tack and say, make sure it's done safely. I'm not saying go ahead and let them have a detached accessory dwelling unit because they're going to do it anyway. That's not my point. If you're building an accessory building, you have the half bath on the ground floor option that's available. All I did was create this draft language because the board generally said, please come up with a way to soft step into detached accessory dwelling units. And the protection that's added is the conditional use permit.
Well, it sounds like we're trying to draft something based on the the bathroom that we were allowing somebody to have in their garage so that they could use the bathroom. So this is how this is morphed into something other than a bathroom in a garage that somebody can use. We've now allowed it to be, okay, somebody wants a half bath, I can't define the half bath, and you guys didn't tell me what the definition is, so I have to break these people's heart and say, this is what I've been told, there's no use that allows you to build a dwelling unit here, so just live with it the way it is, and maybe we can change the ordinance. And to me, I would rather work on that definition if that's where we are, rather than to change the ordinance and create more living situations in a accessory dwelling unit that is detached. It's my feeling. I'd work on that with you.
Okay, well, it seems like you're not against having a public meeting on this.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
No, I'm
okay,
welcoming
all
it, actually.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the people can come out and voice their concerns if they have it.
Okay.
when
so
we-
when do we want to start? Go ahead, Mike.
May
Go
I
ahead.
suggest that
Sure.
that the board ask the planner to present to us at the next meeting a revised copy of the discussion document incorporating Kathy's concerns, any concerns that may have arisen from John's discussions, and the concerns that the planner himself raised, so that we have a fair copy to look at, read over, and maybe that document will be the one to move to public discussion when we hear the public hearing.
Okay,
We can't take this document and do that, because it's flawed.
right, okay.
I don't know if it's going to be the next meeting to be able to come up with those numbers, but when it's,
Well, I suspect that the
Yeah.
numbers John wants have nothing to do, my personal opinion, with this document in front of us.
No, they don't.
But there are questions that were raised that do concern the language of the document that we need to look at before we move it to public hearing, or public discussion, I should say.
Yeah, right. And we had talked about having it in June. Probably we're talking more like July or August.
Okay.
I think.
If we're lucky, yes.
Yeah, right.
well, that's fine. You
Yeah,
guys
okay,
set
yeah,
a date and we'll have a forum.
Well, let's get, can
Yeah,
we agree to, Kathy wanted the conditional permit criteria incorporated in some fashion into this document. We have a couple of other definitional issues that need to be discussed. Maybe we should present them to the public in tandem with this, so that they know what we're doing
Yeah,
regarding
right.
definitions. So
Yeah.
all that's got to get put together before we go much further. We can't do anything based on this
right,
document.
right. And I'm not, I mean, all I'm trying to do is to give thought to, basically what John was saying. What questions are people going to bring up, and have we thought this through enough? That's really where I'm coming from. I want to make sure that if people are asking questions, that we have some good answers for them. So, okay, so we'll see another version of this then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay. All right, and on to the inclusionary. Inclusionary zoning. Do you want to go through this issue?
Actually, the only changes from the last time were those comments that the board made, and this is what those comments look like in place. So some of them were spelling, or grammar, I should say, not spelling. Based on some of the public comments, the prohibition of inclusionary in the municipal watershed district was added. The reference to 67458 was added. The appeal process was clarified. And I believe that is it since the last reading.
Okay. Okay, now this is really being done because this item has been in the zoning ordinance since 2010 or something like that, and no one has taken advantage of it. So that's what we're attempting to do with this. So, does anybody have any thoughts on this one?
I think Tavis has put a pretty good proposal on the table here. It's going to make it easier for him to get his point across to different advocates who are trying to build that housing. So to me, I think it's a good one.
Okay, Tavis, under affordable housing, can you have as defined by New Hampshire ... I mean, shouldn't that statute be, which you're referring to, be defined a little more specifically?
It is in the draft that's going into 175, 175. I just didn't type it all in here.
It would?
If you see on that second page, it says affordable housing moved to section 175, 175. The definition that's prepared for 175, 175 is the state definition referencing the statute.
Oh, that has it in there?
Yeah. So it's as defined by New Hampshire, RSA, bop, 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 and that goes on.
Okay, so it does have the RSA in it. Okay,
So we
all
will
right,
see that in due
was-
course.
And is the state's suggested density bonus also 15%, or do they have something?
The model ordinance that this was originally based upon, generally speaking, is 15 to 20% with a bonus of 15 to 25%. So all I did was keep the model similar to what the town had previously approved with 15 and 20. I broke out, or removed, I should say, not broke out. The recommendation is to no longer specify low-income rental, low to moderate income rental, low-income owner-occupied, low to moderate income owner-occupied, sort of.
Dicing it.
One of the things that board may want to consider is under that scratch-out table, this isn't necessarily something to start with, but a site plan or subdivision can mix affordable housing types and accumulate density bonuses to a maximum bonus equal to blank %. My suggestion is the first step is to leave it at 30. That's the state model recommendation. But that is an area that the board could later increase the density bonus.
Well, this whole revision of the document is designed as an experiment to see how well we attract inclusionary housing in the future, because what we have currently doesn't work. And if you find objection to 30% inadequate, then the board can always come back and make a change.
The reason I left it at the model 30% is most people that are doing or proposing housing projects find it becomes more unaffordable the higher the percentage goes, because you have so much more infrastructure you've got to build in for more units. The increase doesn't help.
So on our lots, when you look at the general picture, is that 30% going to allow people to get in the door, do you think, based on what you see out there in our topography?
No, not really, because most of the lots that have water and sewer are less than half an acre in size. So if you're less than half an acre and you're limited to 6 units per acre, a 30% increase might get you 1 unit.
Although you can have community septic systems designed for.
That's not what it says right now. If the board wants to go there, we can do that.
Is that,
Remember, when the state created inclusionary zoning, it again was very focused on larger communities where the vast majority of the community is on water and sewer. It's in the outlying areas that you don't want to encourage the additional growth. In Wolfeboro, there's a very focused area that has water and sewer, and within that, we're now finding very limited capacity even where there is water and sewer. So one of the changes could be to open that up a little bit to a site plan or subdivision can mix affordable housing types where municipal water and sewer or community well and septic are provided.
Are you finding statewide community well and septic is an alternative in communities like this where they do not have widespread public septic and water systems?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Majority of the smaller towns that don't have water and sewer, the only way to include inclusionary is to require community.
And currently in Wolfeboro, we have just one proposal. Currently in Wolfeboro, we have just one development proposal with a community septic system, or are there others?
There are others.
There are others. Do you expect that to be a likely development here in town as the constraints of the current septic system
Given the
are run
way
up against?
Given the way several sections of the ordinance are written about the only place you're going to be able to do inclusionary are outside the areas with water and sewer.
Right. So maybe that
the-
should be incorporated.
Yeah, well, I see that as the positive area on the outside of this water and sewer, because those are where, there's buildable land. And
Well, Sugar Hill, Harriman Hill, Harriman Hill has water and sewer, but had they not been able to connect, it would be a community well and septic.
yes, and from what I'm hearing out there, I heard today the person wanted to drill a well, and the well driller gave him a price of $70,000 for 1,000 feet. So that's where we're going.
But under, the reason I mentioned community well and septic is the community well under the state statute is a much different standard than for any of you to put a well on your property. There are a lot more checks and balances and quantity and quality requirements that come into that. It actually becomes a regulated water system. So, and there's cost with that, but again, if you're getting a density bonus and you're further out, that can go with it. So if the board is interested, I can amend accordingly.
I would suggest the board should be interested in including community well and septic allowances and perhaps look to boost that maximum bonus from 30 to something else, perhaps?
You could. Maybe 30 is where it needs to stay for municipal water and sewer, but
Yep.
the board is also binding itself a little bit. If someone has a large enough piece of land and they can demonstrate a community well and septic system that could benefit from 50% inclusionary, that's zero impact on the town functionally. However, that is going to be more traffic further out. That is going to be longer emergency response times, things of that nature. So the reason it's written the way it is in the model is to keep everything close to the services. If you're encouraging larger affordable developments that are further out, keep in mind, many that are in the affordable category may or may not have a vehicle or a vehicle for each person. If you're now spreading that further out, what demands is that putting on the system? Just something to think about. It's easy to say all the land is out there, so go build it out there. But all of those people, theoretically, were creating affordable housing
Can't get
or
there.
inclusionary housing type so that they're closer and they're able to benefit from the services of the community.
And I can appreciate your viewpoint on that. I think what we're going to find out is we're going to have to find the balance in our town and maybe ask more of our selectmen to further vet out the possibilities of expanding water in a certain outward direction rather than the sewers, so that we can at least give half of the bargain to create the inclusionary housing that way. I mean, under the circumstances we're boxed in, we're either going to box it into our small community that we have right now, or we plan for the future on somehow.
I mean, it can be structured in that way at the selectman level, where if someone is looking at an extension of X feet or X capacity, here's the price. You know, you
Then
can
may-
do a community well, you can do a community septic. If you request water, you know, above and beyond the connection fee and the install cost, here's the cost of doing this. I mean, there are other statutes that allow the selectmen to consider the public benefit of doing something like this. Okay, they're going to pay to install it, but we still have to treat all the water that they're using, whether it's coming back into the treatment plant or not. It has to be a certain standard to go out there. But that gets into your impact fee discussion and other things to help defray those costs.
It occurs to me that this article is conditioned on development where there is town water and sewer.
The biggest bonus is,
The biggest bonus is, okay,
Yes.
let me be more precise. And we are asking for, or requiring a conditional use permit in the zoning districts that this ordinance would be applicable to.
correct.
Perhaps we might think in these terms, if we are going to allow a higher density bonus for a project where there is a community well and septic, then maybe we need to have more than just a conditional use permit governing that use. Maybe we want to look in terms of either expanding the conditional use permit or making it a special use permit so we have control over transportation, traffic, access to downtown,
I think those
police
can
and
be,
fire and services.
I think those can be folded into the conditional use permit. And the reason I say that is conditional use permits are inherently focused on innovative land use controls, which this is.
Well, in that case, we just have some additional requirements within the conditional use permit requirement
Right.
for this particular use, governing access maybe on a state highway, something of that sort.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
in larger projects, I mean, larger than I've yet to see in Wolfeboro, there are projects like this that you may require a satellite fire station, or you may require things of that nature to be included. But we're looking at much larger neighborhoods to do that. But we could go down the path of, dear Chief Zadi, if a development of this size is this far away, what's your response time? How's that impacted ambulance, fire, police, et cetera? At what size does it become unwieldy, if you will? I do not believe with the language as it's drafted right now, whether it includes community well and septic or not, you're going to have such a large development that you'll cross that threshold.
No, but you're going to want to have it located on at least a Class 5 road, Class 4 road, state highway, just for access in and out. And you're not going to want to have it located on a right-of-way or an easement or something of that sort. You're going to want to have it on a paved blacktop road with quick access in and out of town. So that sort of condition could be folded into the conditional use permit for this particular kind of use. And then attract maybe the 50 or 100 unit development.
I can look at the conditional use permit section and make some modifications there that address how this would impact that.
And put some additional wording into that section regarding site plan, subdivision plan, et cetera, and an additional bonus for that kind of use.
Well, it could go right in here for those that are not on water and sewer, but access via a state road or a Class 5 town road
Okay.
with community well and septic. I mean,
Well, however you want to word it, if you could, if it's okay with the
right,
chairman,
yeah, right.
bring back a text that we can all worry over.
okay.
Have you talked to any developers or anything about this concept? I mean, any meetings?
I have
or-
talked to them, and the response is what I said earlier. The higher the density bonus goes, the less likely they are to consider it.
Yeah, okay. So we're
Because of the cost
kind
of
of spinning our wheels then, is that what you're saying?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
One of the things that this does is very similar to, was it House Bill 6116 that says that elderly and affordable have to be treated the same way? That is one unintended alliance that was created in this draft.
Yep.
So,
Can I make a suggestion for the next one? Are we going to accept all the things that have been changed and crossed out in red already? And the next iteration that we see, the things that have been crossed out, can we drop them?
No,
Because it's getting really unwieldy to try to read.
that's unfortunately,
color?
that's where this for discussion only came from. People said, I don't like seeing the strike through. I need to see what it's actually going to look like. The problem is I have to go back after this, after the board agrees on language, I have to go back and create this because that's what the voting guide will look like.
It's true.
But no, you always have the right to question it. And,
Oh, I know, it's just
yeah,
when
I mean,
you're
so
reading
that's
it,
the purpose
and every
of-
third
of
word's a
this.
strikeout or an addition or whatever.
What-
By the time I get to the third sentence, I have to start over.
When I bring accessory dwelling back and when I bring inclusionary back, I will include in the packet the red line and then the result.
Thank you.
I have one question about the list at the very front about the manufactured housing, elderly housing, open space cluster subdivision. How come conservation subdivision is not in there?
Well, at a later meeting, I think we're going to be discussing turning conservation into open space cluster subdivision. In my reading of this, I read that as conservation subdivision.
Open space cluster.
Open
subdivision.
space
Yep.
cluster.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's how.
Currently,
I
it's
saw it.
conservation subdivision,
yeah,
correct?
right.
It just sounds better when you say it that way.
What's that?
Conservation subdivision.
That's a,
Nobody wants to live in a cluster.
well, but that's what the conservation subdivision is
I know,
encouraging
they're
people.
the same, but it sounds better.
Sounds 1984-ish, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like
I live in
grapes.
cluster 17.
It's like grapes.
I had an interesting side note. I had an interesting phone call the other day with someone asking me if a particular development was a planned unit development.
Unit?
Say that again?
Someone was calling, a law firm was calling, asking if a particular residential development was a planned unit development, because their lender was asking for a planned unit development disclosure or something like that. And I said, categorically not a planned unit development. She said, well, how do you know so quickly? I said, because there are no regulations for planned unit developments in Wolfeboro now, nor have there ever been. It may function as one, but there is no planned unit development in Wolfeboro. That wasn't meant to confuse you.
No. There are lots of other things that we don't have.
Yes, there are lots of other things.
Kathy, I just wanted to add that historically in town here, whenever there's a larger development going on, it's always been up to the developer to absorb the cost and do the installation of any infrastructure that needs to be extended out to that property and stuff, whether it's water, sewer, things like that. So to John's point, John made a comment about the selectmen needing to put this infrastructure out there for them. I don't think it's the town. This is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the Board of Selectmen. My opinion would be that the town probably has the responsibility to have the quality and the type of water or sewer available, the capacities, I guess. And then, but to run it out to, say if I have to run a half a mile out, say out 28 to a development out there, that would be up to the developer to absorb the cost of that and do all of that type of work and not put it on the taxpayer or the user fees of the whichever utility is being used there. And so, I just wanted to kind of point that out. And then I had just one other thought. I'm just going to throw this out for just for thought to think about. Not just, I think I don't know if it's good or bad, whatever, but we talked about, percentage increase for density on stuff here. Because we know in Wolfeboro that we are approaching our sewer capacity and we're getting closer on the water, not so much as on the sewer there, of having a different type of formula so the developer might consider going to on-site water and sewer rather than taxing our infrastructure that we have to make it more cost beneficial for them to put in a well, put in a community's sewer system. There's been a lot of advances in technology, especially the sewer side, for larger developments to make it more economical for them. So Just want to throw that out there, see what people thought about that. Chew on it for a week or two and it comes up again, whatever, but, you know,
Like give a little incentive
Yeah.
to do that one rather than use the town stuff?
Right.
Like give them a coupon or something? Like if you
There
do
you
this, you get,
yeah, it'd be a benefit to them if they, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
density-wise. Just
Okay.
throwing that out for,
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Would the town offer some kind of an incentive in your idea, in your thought? If to get a developer to come in, put in a multifamily or an inclusionary zoning and run his own septic and water local supply, so he wouldn't tax the town system, would there be any kind of an inducement to get him to come in and do it here as opposed to, say, up the road in Tuftonboro or down the road in Alton or
I think the
over in
carrot,
Meredith?
I think the carrot there is what what the board was talking about earlier with the community well and septic, having a higher density increase.
yeah, that was my idea of the carrot to hang in front of them,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
the density is the
And
carrot.
nothing in particular from the town in terms of, say, a 79E accommodation,
Be like a tax break, you mean?
something, I'm not suggesting anything in
Not saying
particular, but it just seems to me that if we offer an increased density bonus, if he runs his own septic and water, that's a good thing. It gets him to think about it. Why should he choose to do it here as opposed to somewhere else? If we don't have a reliable water and septic supply system here, why should a developer come here in particular, as opposed to somewhere else around the lake where they do have a system that can accommodate his development? He doesn't have to pay the cost of bringing it in.
Yeah, I mean, that could also be part of the conversation, you know, moving forward if we decide to discuss it further or even entertain it or whatever, but.
Well, the rumors I've been hearing is many in Wolfeboro just assume it go to a neighboring community.
I'm sorry, say again?
The rumors and understandings that are being shared with me the longer I'm here, I get more of a vibe from Wolfeboro that many Wolfeboroites would rather this type of development go to some other community.
You're not wrong.
Whether that's true or not, and I would hate to think that were the case, but whether it's true or not, the net effect is the same.
Correct.
I mean, in the case, I didn't want to bring this up, but I'll bring it up now. In the case of accessory dwelling units detached, Wolfeboro currently is the only town around the lake that doesn't have that allowance in its ordinances. Every other town, Meredith, Alton, Tuftonboro, Laconia, allow detached ADUs specifically to solve housing issues. To allow an older couple like me and my wife to stay in our house, have a detached ADU where Joe Dokes can rent the joint and pay me so I can stay here. That's exactly in Laconia's ordinance, says specifically, that's why we did it. Now, I don't know what their example is. I don't know whether they're finding it's terrible and they wish we had never done it. But I know that their ordinances have been around for a couple of years. And, you know, all I can suggest is currently Wolfeboro is the only one around that doesn't. Now, maybe we are right and they're all wrong. Or maybe there's something special about Wolfeboro that doesn't pertain in Tuftonboro, Meredith. But when everybody is jumping around in the same direction and you're not, I wonder to myself, you know, are we doing the right thing?
Well, the corollary to that, from my opinion, is the traffic. If you don't encourage the affordable units or the inclusionary units to be in Wolfeboro and they move to all the neighboring towns, people might be happy because the development's occurring in a neighboring town. But if the people are trying to work here, you've just exacerbated the traffic problem on the through or to traffic to Wolfeboro. So there's a balance.
I think, Mike, you hit it right on the head. This is a special community, and we're not like a lot of the other communities around the lake. We have that special piece that we cherish over here, and maybe it's because we don't allow them that makes us special. But I will say, though, when you add an ADU to another property, the value of that property just doubled or increased, and therefore, any entry-level homeowner, and yeah, I'm not dreaming that the entry-level homeowner is gonna come buy these houses for 800,000, but some of them are entry-level houses, but if you add another dwelling to it, you just increase the cost of more of the houses in the area, therefore defeating the purpose of attracting lower-income housing. I get it.
I wonder if we can't invite some of the people, or at least one planner from Meredith or one of these other towns, and ask about their experience with detached ADUs, so that we're not projecting things that aren't reality, that we can, listen to somebody who has experience.
All I'm saying, Vaughn, is that the other towns have ordinances. They've had them on their books for a while. They haven't taken them off currently. If you'd like, I'd be happy to contact the planners of the 4 towns around here that are big, particularly Meredith, who's our major competitor for stuff, and see if they'd be willing to tell me on the phone, if you'd be willing to accept whatever information they get that I relay to the board regarding their experience. I'd be happy to do that.
Or invite them to the forum, so they can speak on the topic.
Yeah, once we have a forum date and
Right.
time and all that, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, does anybody have any problem with Mike following up with 2 or 3 other communities just to get an idea? Okay, all right. Mike, if you
Sure,
don't mind
thank you,
doing
Mike.
that would be great. Okay, all right. Well, inclusionary zoning, we will keep thinking about that, okay?
Tug and pull.
What?
It's a tug and pull.
Yes, it is, right. Okay, the next item is our work program. There are 12 items on here, and that's what we had, well, there are actually 11, but these are the things that we have all thought were quite important to deal with this year. Are you still on board with all of these?
Can we pick a small
regular-
one and just pop it off so we feel like we've done something?
What?
Can we just pick a small one and pop it off so we feel like we've done something? 'Cause these other
Number
ones,
five is crossed off.
We did, yeah.
it just seems like we're just chewing on some of these for a
Yeah.
long time.
Well, Shorefront, you've seen,
Right.
and is effectively ready, it just hasn't had its hearing, so it's not crossed off. CIP is in process, there's a draft calendar, people have been appointed, so you can half cross that off. There's only 12 weeks of fun left for that. Water sewer impact to regulations, that's in process, but we're still awaiting the survey on that before that can be finished up. Housing updates is functionally everything we've been talking about with inclusionary. I think 6 is done. I don't think the board wants to revisit that.
No, I think we talked about that tonight. We
Yeah.
gotta-
No, we talked about accessory dwelling units.
Well, you talked about.
And then
half
the
that.
addition of adding ADU to the exemptions from that. Stormwater
No,
regulations.
just a second. We did say that we would talk about that when it was brought as a warrant article. I think the planning board said, yes, well, we'll look at it again.
Right, and
Isn't that
it
what
came
you're
back,
talking about?
Yeah.
and it came back at the last meeting, and what I heard was everyone wanted it to stay. I didn't hear any discussion of removing the half
What
bath.
last meeting? You mean the last planning board meeting?
Correct.
We did want it to stay, but I think
Yeah.
we want to help you with the clarity.
Right, yeah, right.
Let me tell you what's happened, if you wanted very briefly. What's happened is people are told they have to pick which 2 fixtures they want on the ground floor. That's how it's being handled right now, and if that was the intent, that is what's happening.
I don't understand that.
If you want a sink and a shower, you can do that. If you want a toilet and a sink, you can do that. If you want a toilet and a shower, you can do that, but you cannot have a whole bath,
Yeah, we
and
both-
everything has
We
to
talked
be.
about this.
Yeah, we did.
We did,
talk
but
about it,
but again, the intent wasn't to have a shower. That was never part of our discussion. It was a toilet.
toilet and a sink is a house.
Okay,
Toilet and a
then we
sink.
need to dig back into the definition and say you're allowed a
Okay,
toilet
well,
and a
that's why-
sink on the ground
That's why
floor.
it was on here,
Yeah.
because we thought we needed a little more discussion.
If the board wants to specify which
It would make it easier for you.
utilities,
Yeah, that's, all we were trying to do was to make it easier, really, for the code officer. What about the stormwater regulations and roads?
stormwater regulations is done. The board
Yeah.
had also wanted to consider applying stormwater regulations to roads. That would be outside the subdivision purview. That would be establishing stormwater regulations that are invoked when the town does road work.
Okay.
And that would be basically recommendations to the selectmen on how that department would run.
The impact fees, we're sort of dealing with that.
They're in process. There is a contractor that has been hired. They're working on that, anticipating a public presentation, whether it's electronic or in person, in July and November, on picking up from where Mayberry left off and making some recommendations for the board to consider.
Okay, and the master plan priorities, that's kind of in progress now. Peter Goodwin
Peter's
has
done
kind of got that one under control. Conservation subdivision regulations, you prepared that for us. We had a discussion and then kind of put that aside because other things came up. And then the lots without frontage, that was another issue that came up that we felt we needed to be more specific in the regulations in order to make them a little more enforceable.
Yes, and I think the addendum to that is readopting 67441 when it was, when we adopted 17555-1, and that removed 141 out of the regulation process, and there's some criteria there that could be adopted that would help the ZBA on their lots with no frontage, because they could add asking a bond for that house that wants to build on a road, and create some engineering criteria for pre-inspection and post-inspection to protect homeowners on that road.
Okay, and we should, Ed had also talked about that one being a conditional permit, because the way it's written now is that it comes to us for a comment, and then it goes to the ZBA, and then I just think that needs maybe a little bit more thought, right? Okay.
If there's consensus to move in that direction, I can revamp that and bring it back in a manner that would do that.
Okay. And then removing the C2 ordinance that was from last year. We took everything and put it in the Pine Hill Development District, and so really there is no need for the C2, and we can
Right, but is it
change that into a C1. Yes,
Well,
right.
Cross
So-
it off.
The reason I didn't put the.
But that has to go-
If you want, you can put a soft line through most things. You can put a hard line through 6. Once there's a public hearing on removing C2, that can move to a hard line. So I'm trying to keep them active until there's a hearing and everything
Yeah.
is
Right.
set to become a warrant article.
I feel like we just need
It's
little
gonna be
check
a-
boxes that.
it's gonna be a
in
long
process
meeting this-
Doing,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Or a long vote, I should say.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
It's not as bad as it looks then. We just keep seeing the same list.
Okay, the next item is public comment. Oh,
The next time when I get a packet, could I have the discussion items? I didn't have any of that tonight, so I just got the hearing documents, none of the discussion items. The other thing I want to point out is you may want to get a count on the number of sewer hookups we have in water. We have, I think, about 1,000 on the sewer and about 3,000 on the water. The water goes far further than the sewer system, and you may want to get that on a map so you can kind of see where it goes. So you may want to make some changes based on, places may have water and they might just only need a septic. And we have, as a Board of Selectmen, out at the end of Clark Road, let somebody put in some sewer and have other people hooked up. We also had it done out in off Sewell Road. So we are open if somebody wants to pay to extend their sewer and we have capacity, we'll always allow them to pay.
I got a question. So do they pay to get it installed and then it's the town's property after that?
Correct.
There's
They-
no,
That's
there's
right.
no
We-
further input and funding to help take care of that for the future?
No, we take the responsibility. That's all part of our rates.
Okay.
Our capital outlay is part of how we set our rates. There's a certain formula the consultant does.
And everybody along there has the impact fees to pay, the hookup fees on that too, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, all right. Okay, let's see, other business. Mike, you sent me an email, and I think I passed it on to everybody about the state statute that, well, it's almost there,
Yeah,
right?
you've all got it. Sorry, Julie, it's got lots of crossouts,
Yeah.
boldings, and italicized type. It's not easy to read. It's not meant to be easy to read. It's simply the Omnibus Land Use Land Use Bill that the House and the Senate have both passed. It's gone on to the governor for signature. Presumably, it will be signed. What got the bill through the House this time was that somebody very cleverly rolled in $6 million for a brand-new parking garage. And the argument was, if you don't pass the bill, you won't have anywhere to park, so everyone passed the bill, and in the bill was all of this housing stuff. So what we have in the Housing Board, as you can see, and you should really read it, just to see what they're going for, but the takeaways, the principal takeaway is, as of July of next year, any inclusionary housing bill that gives a density bonus for old age has to give it the same bonus for workforce housing. So what the state's moving towards is a single bonus structure, regardless of the type of housing that you're doing. If you're going to give a bonus, you got to give this kind of bonus. Then there are some changes to 79E, or no, is it 16? 162K, which now seems to allow towns to declare new public projects to be projects of public use, and also to allow towns to actually go out and pay for and build their own public housing projects, which is not something I'm sure that our special town of Wolfeboro would ever think of doing, but it may happen in the next 50 years when we're all dead and gone, when Wolfeboro is something different from what it is currently. But anyway, it's something to be thinking about. The principal one that we should be concerned about, because we're working on it right now, is the density issue.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, anybody have any questions? Thanks, Mike.
Please read over what you have. And read over the fiscal notes and the NHMA notes, because these are acts that we are going to have to be incorporating into our zoning in the future, and it will be important to know as much as you can about what they do.
Okay, let's see, I had an email from Amy Muccio saying that the Heritage Commission, as a follow-up to the charrette, is looking to form a committee, and they thought it would be nice to have a planning board person on that committee. Vaughn, are you on that committee? Okay, because I was on that committee too. Does anybody else want to be on that committee? Okay. Okay, then I'm just going to write back and say that, you want to be on it, Mike? No.
Vaughn can report back if
Okay,
there's anything
Vaughn
important.
okay, very good. Okay, and let's see. we have been invited to the Harriman Hill Trail opening on June 15th at 7 o'clock up at Harriman Hill. So if anybody wants to go, we've all participated in the approval of the trail, so, and Harriman Hill. Okay, let's see. The Bridge Falls lighting option, Barry Muccio presented this to the selectmen the other night. And so then I thought it would be good if planning board could take a look at it. And, I mean, he said he was approaching the selectmen for suggestions, so I figured that if he was approaching them, that he would gladly accept our suggestions.
lighting
Right,
committee,
yes, right.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he'd done that one first.
Right.
I have a comment, and that is, we constantly require people to have dark sky compliant fixtures.
Yes.
It would be kind of, I can't think of a nice word. If we do not, if we do not require that of our own town.
We,
So,
go ahead, let's finish, Vaughn.
And there are 3 choices, and only one of them is completely dark sky like it's supposed to be.
No, actually, there were 2.
yeah, but one was high maintenance, or they couldn't change it, or open to birds and bees
Well-
and something.
One was a little higher maintenance than the others. What our consensus of the meeting to have Barry move forward was to definitely move forward exploring further into the dark sky compliant. That's the route we want to go. You know, one of the versions there was dark sky friendly, I think it said on it, the first one that's in there. And we also talked too about kind of keeping the same look as the ones that are downtown now and along, you know, Back Bay docks and stuff there by Bradley's and the railroad station, stuff like that. Rather than the ones that come out and have the, what do you want, the hook, kind of the hook and then just the down
Industrial.
type thing.
That's
Maybe
nice.
similar to what Huggins Hospital has like that over their parking lot. But he was, you know, given the consensus that we want to go dark sky compliant for sure, because, you know, as you just said, Vaughn, I mean, it should be, you know, don't do as, you know, what's the saying go? You know,
I say
do
that
as,
as a-
yeah, don't
It's hard not to
do as
use
I
bad
do,
words.
don't as I say, whatever.
Right.
But so we know we need to set the example too, so we
Okay.
understand that.
But Barry did kind of say, under his breath, there's not really anybody down there to see the lights. He did say that quietly, I heard him. If you go over onto Bay Street in the dark and you look towards Foss Field, it is like you're on stage. It's all the spotlights all up and down there. And I personally think that if it's not completely dark sky for those lights that are complete cutoff down, it's going to be like that again, because he was saying, well, it's just 90 degrees cut off. Well, 90 degrees cut off is still like right across the lake,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm hoping that he finds some of these that are a little bit more restrictive when he continues his look.
I believe that is what dark sky compliant is the 90-degree cutoff right there. That's what the definition of.
Yeah, but the other ones that he was talking about that you guys didn't like as well actually had the cone even farther down,
Yeah, I'm not sure what the angle was coming out. I think it was.
really low. Yeah.
I don't think we had that information, but anyway. Yep.
Anybody?
My thought on the aesthetics is that it doesn't have to be the fancy downtown look. It could be more of the hook, you know, country look on the path.
You know
than
what I
the-
thought too was, you know, Wolfeboro was not all that pretty, should we say, and especially where the lights are. I mean, that was the railroad. It was not pretty. So industrial looking would have looked just fine going up and down there because that's what it is. That's the historical piece that they're trying to pull in down at the other end of the path. So in my mind, you know, going from, oh, it's really pretty in front of the rich guy's house to, oh, farther down the street where they're really working, now it's more utilitarian, perfectly fits my mind of what the whole area was.
And those pictures that he demonstrated, the 3 types, the third one wasn't particularly industrial. It was still a fancy light. It's just that it had a different shape to it.
Yeah.
Right. So is everybody okay if I write to Barry and say that we've discussed this and we feel that it's really important to have the dark sky compliant? Is that okay?
Sure.
With some of the comments that Ron has just made? Okay, all right, then that's what I will do. Okay, I think that was all that I had in the way of. Yeah, anybody else have any other business that they want to bring up? Okay, then the minutes of May 17th.
I didn't get them.
I didn't either.
It's my understanding that the copies of the minutes didn't make it into the packet. So I will own that and bring them back to your next meeting.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. Okay. All right, there's nothing else, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much, folks.